A retired schoolteacher from Ohio was sitting in her kitchen on a Tuesday morning, drinking her coffee, doing nothing special, when she whispered 7 words to herself. Words she had never told her husband of 31 years. Words she had never shared with her daughter, her sister, or her closest friend. 3 weeks later, her phone rang. It was a real estate company offering to buy a piece of land she had forgotten she even owned. The check was for a 83,000. Now I know what you're thinking. Coincidence, lucky timing. But here's what's going to make you stop and pay attention. That same week, a man in Dubai, one of the wealthiest self-made investors in the Middle East, was asked in a rare private interview what single habit he credits for every major financial breakthrough in his life. He paused for a long time. Then he said, "There are 7 words I say to myself before every decision. I have never told anyone what they are. I never will." The interviewer pushed. He smiled and changed the subject. 2 people, opposite sides of the world, opposite financial backgrounds, the same practice. And today, I'm going to show you exactly what Joseph Murphy discovered about why this works, what these 7 words are, and most importantly, why the moment you breathe them to another living person, their power disappears completely. Because what Murphy uncovered after decades of research wasn't just a motivational trick. It was a precise, repeatable mechanism for reprogramming the deepest layer of your mind. A layer that is running your financial life right now, today, without your permission. And almost nobody is talking about this specific part of his work. The part about silence. The part about secrecy. The part that changes everything. Stay with me, because this is going to fundamentally shift the way you understand your own mind. Joseph Murphy spent over 40 years studying why certain people attract wealth almost effortlessly while others, equally intelligent, equally hardworking, equally deserving, struggle their entire lives. He wasn't a motivational speaker selling hope. He was a serious researcher of the human mind who believed that the answers weren't outside us. They were buried in a part of us that most people never learn to access deliberately. What he found came down to one core truth. Your subconscious mind is not passive. It is an active, tireless force that is constantly working to create the reality that matches its deepest programming. Not your hopes, not your wishes, not what you consciously want. What it was programmed to expect, and here is where it gets uncomfortable for most people. That programming didn't come from your choices. It came from your childhood, from the words you heard repeated around the dinner table, from the arguments about money you overheard through thin walls at night, from the sighs your parents made when the bills came in, from the casual, offhand phrases that seemed harmless at the time. Things like, "We can't afford that," and "Money doesn't come easy for people like us," and "You have to work yourself to the bone just to survive." Those words didn't just pass through you. They lodged themselves into your subconscious like code written into the foundation of a building. And that code has been running ever since, quietly, persistently, shaping what opportunities you notice, shaping what risks you take, shaping what you believe you're allowed to have. Murphy called this poverty consciousness. And he was very clear about something that most people find difficult to accept. Poverty consciousness has nothing to do with how smart you are, how hard you work, or how much you deserve success. It is simply a program, and like any program, it can be rewritten. But only if you know exactly how. This is where the 7 words come in. Murphy discovered that your subconscious mind has specific windows of maximum receptivity, moments when it is wide open to new programming, like soil after rain, ready to receive whatever seed you plant in it. And the most powerful of those windows is the moment right before you take any action connected to money, opportunity, or change. That brief, suspended moment between intention and action, that is when the door to your subconscious swings open widest. Most people walk through that moment unconsciously. They carry their anxiety with them, their doubt, their old programming, right into the actions they take. And then they wonder why the results never change. But Murphy found something extraordinary in the people who consistently attracted wealth and opportunity into their lives. In that precise moment, Right before any significant action, they were doing something specific and deliberate with their inner voice. They were planting a command. Not a wish, not a prayer, not an affirmation repeated mechanically like a mantra on a recording. A command, spoken in the silence of their own mind, with total emotional conviction, and with absolute secrecy. Now I need to explain the secrecy, because this is the part that most people skip over, and it is the reason most people fail even when they try techniques like this. Murphy studied hundreds of cases where people had begun working with subconscious reprogramming techniques and seen early results, only to have those results suddenly stall or reverse. He found a common thread running through almost every one of those cases. At some point, the person had told someone what they were doing, a friend, a spouse, a sibling, someone they trusted completely, someone who they were sure would be supportive. And yet, the moment they shared their practice, something shifted. The momentum slowed. The results faded. The energy changed. Murphy called this phenomenon psychic contamination, and he was specific about the mechanism behind it. When you share your deepest intention with another person, their subconscious mind immediately begins processing it through the filter of their own beliefs. Even if they smile and say, "That's wonderful, I believe in you," their subconscious is running a different calculation entirely. It is measuring your intention against everything they have ever been told about money, about possibility, about people like you and people like them. And unless that person is operating from a place of genuine deep abundance consciousness, which is extraordinarily rare, their subconscious is generating doubt. Quiet, invisible, but real. And here is the part that Murphy found truly remarkable. You feel it. Not consciously. Your conscious mind registers their smile, their encouraging words, their supportive tone. But your subconscious, which is processing 11 million bits of information per second, compared to the 40 bits your conscious mind can handle, your subconscious picks up everything their words are masking: the flicker of skepticism, the subtle energy of disbelief, the frequency of doubt. And because your subconscious is always looking for confirmation of what others believe, it starts to absorb their doubt into your own programming, like a tuning fork that begins to vibrate at someone else's frequency. This is why you have had the experience of feeling genuinely excited about something, sharing it with someone you love, and walking away feeling deflated for reasons you couldn't explain. That deflation was real. That was your subconscious absorbing contamination. Murphy also discovered something equally powerful on the opposite side of this equation. When you keep your intention completely secret, something remarkable happens inside you. Your subconscious mind interprets secrecy as significance. Think about this carefully. We only guard things that are truly precious to us. We only keep secrets about things that matter at the deepest level. When you wrap your intention in total secrecy, your subconscious receives a very clear message. This is sacred. This is real. This matters more than anything else, and it responds accordingly. It begins organizing your perception, your attention, your instincts, your energy, around making that intention real. Opportunities that were always there begin to surface in your awareness. People who can help you appear in your path. Ideas arrive at unexpected moments. Doors that seemed closed begin to open, not because the world changed, but because your subconscious changed what it's looking for. Murphy called this the law of concealed intention, and he believed it was one of the most powerful and least understood forces available to any human being. The things you hold sacred in silence carry more creative power than anything you broadcast to the world. Now I want to give you the exact structure of the 7 words, because Murphy was very precise about this, and the precision matters. After years of documenting what worked and what didn't, Murphy identified a specific architecture that makes a 7-word phrase maximally effective for subconscious reprogramming. It isn't about the words being magical in themselves. It is about what the structure does to your subconscious when delivered in the right state, at the right moment with the right emotional charge. The phrase that emerged most consistently from his research as the foundational template is this: "Everything I need flows to me now." Let me walk you through why each element of this phrase is doing something specific and deliberate inside your mind. Everything. This single word is doing heavy lifting that most people completely underestimate. Your subconscious mind is a literalist. It takes your words seriously. Most people, even when they try to think positively, are unconsciously qualifying their desires. They think, I hope I get enough, or maybe I can get more, or I just need a little relief. The word everything refuses all qualifications. It instructs your subconscious to stop filtering, stop limiting, stop deciding in advance what's realistic and what isn't. It programs your inner mind for total receptivity to abundance in all forms. I need. These two words are critical because they anchor the phrase in genuine emotional truth. Murphy was very clear that subconscious programming fails when it feels false to you. If your phrase feels like a lie, your subconscious rejects it at the cellular level. I need is something you can say and mean completely. It doesn't require you to pretend you already have what you want. It states honestly and openly that there is a real desire here, a real gap between where you are and where you want to be. And your subconscious respects that honesty. It works with it rather than against it. Flows. This is the most important word in the entire phrase and the one that most people would never think to choose. Murphy discovered that the subconscious mind responds powerfully to words that carry a quality of movement, of ease, of natural momentum. Flows is not a word of struggle. It is not a word of chasing. It is a word of natural movement toward its destination. Water flows downhill not because it is straining or trying or desperate. It flows because it is following a natural law. When you program your subconscious with the word flows, you are instructing it that abundance moving toward you is natural. That it requires no force. That it is the path of least resistance. This single word begins dismantling decades of programming that told you money requires suffering to obtain. To me, these two words complete the circuit. They make you the destination, not the chaser, not the pursuer, the destination. This is a profound shift in your subconscious relationship with wealth. Most people's programming has them running after money, always one step behind, always reaching. To me, reverses that polarity completely. You become the point that abundance naturally moves toward. Now, this closes the phrase with urgency and presence. Your subconscious doesn't understand the future very well. It operates in the present tense. When you say someday, or eventually, or when the time is right, your subconscious files that request under a category it never really opens. But no is a word your subconscious understands immediately and completely. It signals that this isn't a distant wish, this is a present command. And your inner mind responds to commands. Now, Murphy was equally clear that these exact words are not sacred in themselves. What is sacred is the structure. The phrase must carry the energy of total receptivity, natural flow, and present moment command. So if these words don't feel completely natural in your voice, in your inner language, you can adapt them. Some people find that all abundance comes directly to me now, carries the same architecture and feels more authentic to them. Others use every good thing flows freely to me now. There are people who connect more deeply with wealth and opportunity find me right now. What you are looking for is a phrase that when you say it silently to yourself, in the privacy of your own mind, with your eyes closed and your full emotional attention behind it, it feels completely true, not like wishful thinking. True, like a natural law you are simply agreeing with. That feeling of truth is the signal that your subconscious has accepted the command rather than rejected it. Now I want to give you the exact process that Murphy documented for using these words at maximum effectiveness. Because saying the words is only one layer. The state you are in when you say them determines everything. The first thing you need is genuine physical privacy, not just privacy in your head. Murphy found that the body matters enormously in this process. If you are surrounded by other people when you speak your 7 words, some part of your nervous system is always managing how you appear to them, always performing, always slightly guarded. That guardedness closes the door to your subconscious. You need to be somewhere, even if just for 30 seconds, where no human eye is on you and no human ear can hear you. your car before you walk into a meeting, a bathroom before an important call, the moment before you open an email about money, wherever you can find 30 seconds of genuine aloneness. The second step is what Murphy called anchoring into the felt sense of having. This is not visualization in the way most people practice it. Most people try to visualize and end up watching a movie in their mind, separate from it, like watching themselves on a screen. Murphy found this is almost completely ineffective for subconscious reprogramming. What works is feeling, not seeing. Feeling. Close your eyes and ask yourself, what does it feel like in my body right now, in this moment, if everything I need has already arrived? Don't think about the number. Don't picture the bank account. Feel the weight lifting off your shoulders. Feel the loosening in your chest. Feel the quiet that comes when financial anxiety is completely gone. Feel the freedom in your body when you know, genuinely know, that everything is handled. Hold that feeling for just 20 or 30 seconds. Let it be real in your body. Your subconscious cannot tell the difference between what is genuinely experienced and what is vividly felt. This is not a theory. This is established in neuroscience. The brain's emotional centers activate identically whether an experience is real or vividly imagined with full somatic engagement. You are not pretending. You are creating a real neurological experience that your subconscious will file as evidence. The third step is speaking your 7 words into that feeling. Not before the feeling is real. Not while you are trying to create the feeling. After the feeling is already alive in your body, you speak the words silently, deliberately, slowly, with the same weight and clarity that you would use if you were making the most important declaration of your life. Because you say each word like it matters. Because it does. You hear them in your mind the way you would hear a voice speaking directly to you, close and clear and certain. You repeat them 3 times. No more, no less. Murphy found that once is a whisper the subconscious can dismiss. Twice creates a pattern it begins to consider. 3 times registers as intention it must take seriously. More than 3 times begins to feel like desperation, and desperation is a frequency of doubt, which cancels the programming. The 4th step is the one most people cannot do, and it is the step that separates the people who see results from the people who don't. After the 3 repetitions, you stop. You open your eyes, you take a breath, and you act as if it is already done, not as if you hope it will happen, not as if you are waiting to see whether it worked, as if it is already done. This is not performance. It is an instruction to your subconscious that the command was real and final and is already in motion. Desperation is your subconscious saying, I don't actually believe this. Calm certainty is your subconscious saying, this is already underway. The emotional state you carry after the 7 words is part of the programming itself. Murphy documented cases that seemed almost impossible to explain through ordinary cause and effect. People who had been unemployed for over a year finding meaningful work within weeks of beginning this practice. People with decades of financial struggle suddenly finding their circumstances shifting in ways they had no logical way to predict or arrange. People experiencing what they could only describe as a stream of fortunate coincidences beginning to flow through their lives in a consistent and accelerating way. And in every documented case, the people who saw results had 2 things in common. They practiced with total consistency, and they told absolutely nobody. The people who saw partial results or no results almost always had one of 2 failure points. Either they practiced inconsistently, skipping days, doing it casually without the felt sense of having, turning it into a mechanical habit instead of a living command. Or they told someone, sometimes just one person, sometimes just once, and the contamination was enough to break the circuit. There is something else Murphy identified that I want to share with you because it explains why this practice accelerates over time rather than plateauing. He called it the momentum of belief. When you first begin speaking your 7 words with conviction, your subconscious is working against decades of contradictory programming. The old beliefs are louder and more established than the new command. Results may be subtle at first, an unexpected opportunity, a conversation that opens a door, a sudden idea that leads somewhere useful. Small things that you might dismiss as coincidence if you aren't paying attention. But Murphy found that if you continue the practice through that early phase without collapsing back into doubt, something shifts. Your subconscious begins to accumulate evidence for the new program rather than the old one. Each small result becomes proof that the program is real. And that proof makes the next repetition of your 7 words more emotionally charged, more certain, more deeply received by your inner mind, which produces slightly larger results, which produces more certainty, which produces even larger results. The momentum builds on itself. What starts as a whisper becomes a roar, but only if you protect it, only if you guard it in silence, only if you never let anyone else's doubt into the frequency you are building. Think of it this way. You are building a fire. In the beginning, it is fragile, a small flame that needs protecting. The slightest wind can extinguish it. Telling someone your practice is opening a window in a storm and then wondering why the flame went out. But if you protect that flame, feed it consistently, keep the wind away, it grows to the point where nothing can touch it, where it generates its own heat and light and draws everything toward it. That is what Murphy was describing, not a trick, not a shortcut. A practice of such profound internal consistency that your subconscious finally, fully, completely accepts a new truth about who you are and what naturally belongs in your life. I want to leave you with something Murphy wrote that stayed with me long after I first read it. He said that the greatest poverty is not the poverty of money, it is the poverty of expectation. People do not suffer most because resources are scarce. They suffer because somewhere deep inside they have accepted a story that scarcity is their natural condition. And they have never questioned that story because they have never learned to go to the place where the story was written and rewrite it. Your 7 words are the pen. Your silence is the page that protects the ink while it dries. Your consistency is the hand that keeps writing until the new story is the only one your subconscious knows. Before you move on from this video, I want you to do one thing right now. Choose your 7 words. They need to carry the energy of receptivity, of natural flow, of present moment arrival. They need to feel true when you say them, not hopeful, true. And they need to feel precious enough to protect in complete silence. Write them down somewhere only you will ever see. Memorize them. Make them yours. Then the next time you are about to do anything connected to money or opportunity, before you open that email, before you walk into that room, before you make that call, take 30 seconds. Find your privacy, find your felt sense of already having, and speak your 7 words 3 times with everything you have. Then let it go. Trust the process that Murphy spent his entire life proving works, and watch what your subconscious, finally freed from its old programming, begins to build for you. If something in this video landed for you, hit the like button and subscribe, because we go deep into Joseph Murphy's teachings in ways that most channels never touch. And drop a comment below. You don't need to share your 7 words. Keep those sacred. Just let me know you're starting. Let me know you're ready. Because the life Murphy believed you were capable of living is not waiting for luck or timing or circumstances to change. It is waiting for you to change the conversation happening in the deepest, most powerful part of your own mind. That conversation starts now, with 7 words, in complete silence, known only to you. Now I want to go deeper into something that Murphy discovered that almost nobody in the self-help world talks about. Because most people, even after they understand the 7 words, even after they commit to the practice, make one critical mistake that quietly sabotages everything they're building. And it has nothing to do with the words themselves. It has to do with what happens in the hours after you speak them. Murphy noticed something consistent across the people who struggled to see results. After they completed their 7-word practice, after they had found their privacy and anchored into the felt sense of having and spoken their command with conviction, they would go back into their daily life and immediately begin doing something that undid everything they had just built. They would start monitoring. They would check their bank balance, looking for evidence that something had changed. They would replay the practice in their mind, wondering if they had done it correctly. They would watch for signs, hunt for confirmations, scan their circumstances for proof that the subconscious had received the command. And every time they looked and didn't see immediate evidence, a small wave of doubt would move through them. Not enough to feel dramatic, just a quiet, almost imperceptible erosion of certainty. Murphy called this the observation trap, and he was very precise about why it is so destructive. When you monitor your manifestation, you are not checking on it neutrally. You are measuring it against your old programming, against the part of you that still believes money is hard to come by, against the part of you that expects disappointment. And that measuring, that watching, that anxious scanning of your circumstances is itself a form of subconscious communication. It tells your inner mind that you don't actually believe the command you gave it, that you are waiting to see whether it decides to comply, and your subconscious, which is always matching the deepest frequency you are broadcasting, responds to that doubt rather than to the 7 words you spoke in privacy. This is why Murphy emphasized that the practice does not end with the 7 words. The practice continues in how you carry yourself through the rest of the day, in whether you can hold the quiet inner certainty that something is already in motion, even when your external circumstances look exactly the same as they did yesterday. He used an analogy that I have never forgotten. He said that speaking your 7 words and then monitoring for results is like planting a seed and then digging it up every day to check whether it has sprouted yet. The digging destroys the very thing you planted. The seed needs to be left alone in the dark, in silence, undisturbed, so that it can do what seeds do when they are trusted. Your 7 words are the seed. The silence that follows them, the undisturbed certainty that continues through your day, that is the soil doing its work around something you cannot yet see, but which is already growing. Murphy also discovered something that I think is one of the most quietly radical ideas in all of his work. He found that the people who attracted the most significant financial shifts were not necessarily the ones who practiced with the most intensity. They were the ones who practiced with the most peace, not excitement, not passion, not desperate wanting. Peace, because peace is the frequency of certainty. Excitement still carries within it the energy of something that hasn't happened yet. Passion still contains the shadow of doubt that needs to be overcome. But peace is what you feel when you know. When something is so settled inside you that you don't need to talk about it, don't need to track it, don't need reassurance about it. You simply know it is underway. That is the inner state Murphy found consistently in the people who saw results that seemed to others like extraordinary luck. On the outside they looked calm, undramatic, unhurried. On the inside they were carrying a settled, unshakable knowing that their subconscious was working, that the command had been received, that the process was already in motion even before any external evidence appeared. Murphy called this the posture of the expectant eye. Think about someone who knows without any doubt that they are going to inherit a significant sum of money. They don't chase it. They don't obsess over it. They don't spend their days anxiously monitoring the legal process. They simply live their life with the quiet background knowledge that something significant is coming to them, that it is already theirs, that it is simply a matter of time before what belongs to them arrives. That is exactly the inner posture Murphy found most effective for subconscious reprogramming, not desperation, not excitement, not effortful positive thinking. The calm, grounded, unspoken certainty of someone who already knows. And here is something that Murphy documented, which I find particularly remarkable. He found that when people successfully embodied this posture, when they genuinely carried that peace and certainty through their daily life after speaking their 7 words, something strange began to happen to the people around them. Without any conversation about money or intention or practice, the people in their lives began to change how they interacted with them. Opportunities began to arrive through relationships that had previously seemed purely social. Conversations that had nothing to do with finances began turning toward money in ways that opened unexpected doors. People began referring them for things, recommending them for things, thinking of them first for things. Murphy believed this was not coincidence. He believed it was the result of the subconscious broadcasting a changed frequency, one that others could not consciously identify but responded to instinctively. The way certain people walk into a room and everyone feels their confidence without being able to explain exactly why. The way some people have a quality that makes others want to help them, connect them, include them. That quality is not charisma. It is not charm. It is not personality. It is a subconscious frequency of expectancy and certainty that other subconscious minds can detect and want to move toward. When you successfully reprogram your subconscious with your 7 words, you don't just change your inner dialogue. You change the signal you are broadcasting into every room you enter, every conversation you have, every interaction you experience. And the world, which is full of subconscious minds responding to frequencies they can't consciously explain, begins to reorganize itself around your new signal. Now I want to address something that Murphy wrote about extensively and that I think is essential to understand before you truly commit to this practice. He called it the challenge of the interval. The interval is the space between when you plant your intention and when you see your results. It is the gap. And Murphy was absolutely clear that the interval is not empty. It is the most active phase of the entire process. It is when your subconscious is doing the deepest, most complex work of reorganizing your inner world to match your command. It is when the old programming is being dismantled and the new programming is taking root. But from the outside, the interval looks like nothing is happening, and that appearance of nothing is the most dangerous moment in the entire practice. Because it is in the interval that doubt has its greatest opportunity to creep back in. It is when the old voice inside you, the one that has been speaking since childhood, the one that knows all the ways things don't work out, begins to whisper its familiar story again. Murphy found that almost everyone who failed at this practice failed in the interval. Not at the beginning when enthusiasm was high, not at the end when results were appearing. In the middle, in the quiet, apparently uneventful space where nothing visible was happening, but everything invisible was being rearranged. He gave very specific guidance for surviving the interval with your new programming intact. The first instruction was this: when doubt arrives during the interval, do not fight it. Do not argue with it. Do not try to think your way past it. Simply notice it. Name it quietly to yourself. This is the interval. This is what the interval feels like. This is normal, and return to your 7 words, not frantically, not as a defensive move against the doubt, but gently and deliberately, the way you would return your attention to your breath during meditation. Calm, unhurried, certain. The second instruction Murphy gave for the interval was to actively look for what he called interval evidence. Not proof that your outcome has arrived, proof that things are in motion, a conversation that opens an unexpected door, a random encounter that turns out to be relevant, an idea that arrives in the shower and points towards something you hadn't considered, an email you almost didn't open, a phone call from someone you hadn't thought about in years. Murphy found that the interval is almost never actually empty. It is full of small signals that the subconscious is already reorganizing reality. But most people are looking for the big result and completely miss the trail of smaller ones leading toward it. When you learn to recognize and acknowledge the interval evidence, 2 things happen. Your certainty deepens because you begin to see that something genuinely is in motion, and your subconscious receives confirmation that its work is being noticed and valued, which accelerates the process. The third instruction Murphy gave was one that surprised me when I first encountered it. He said, during the interval, do something. Take any small action that moves in the direction of your intention, not because the action itself will create the result, but because action is the language your subconscious uses to confirm that you genuinely believe something is possible. People who speak their 7 words and then wait passively for the world to deliver results to their doorstep are sending a mixed signal to their subconscious. The words say, "This is real and I expect it." The passivity says, "I'm not sure it's real enough to actually do anything about." Your subconscious picks up the contradiction and gets confused about which program to run. But when you speak your 7 words and then take even a small action, something that moves 1 degree toward your intention, you create a coherent signal. Your words and your behavior are saying the same thing. And your subconscious, which is always looking for coherence, locks onto that combined signal and runs it at full power. The action doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need to be a grand gesture that costs you money or time or courage you don't currently have. Murphy found that the action simply needs to be genuine. A phone call you've been putting off, a conversation you've been avoiding, a door you've been reluctant to knock on, something real even if small. That demonstrates through your behavior that you actually believe what your 7 words are telling your subconscious. I want to tell you about something else Murphy documented that most people find startling when they first hear it. He found that the 7-word practice doesn't just change your financial circumstances, it changes your relationship with time. People who have been operating from poverty consciousness experience time as pressure. There is never enough of it. Opportunities are always in the past or impossibly far in the future. Deadlines feel like threats. The present moment feels like a gap between what was lost and what might never come. But as the new subconscious programming takes hold, something shifts in how time feels. The pressure begins to release. The present moment begins to feel spacious rather than scarce. People find themselves making decisions from a place of clarity rather than panic. They stop rushing toward outcomes in a way that actually pushes those outcomes away. They begin to experience what Murphy described as being in the right place at the right moment, consistently, in a way that feels effortless because it has become natural. This shift in the experience of time is one of the earliest signs that the subconscious reprogramming is genuinely taking hold. If you are doing this practice and you begin to notice that you feel slightly less rushed, slightly less anxious, slightly more present in your daily life, that is not a small thing. That is your subconscious beginning to operate from the new program. The financial results that follow that inner shift are simply the external expression of an internal transformation that is already underway. Murphy believed and spent his entire career demonstrating that the outer world is always a reflection of the inner world. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always, without exception. This means that any change in your outer financial circumstances, no matter how dramatic it seems, is always preceded by a change in the subconscious programming that was generating the old circumstances. Most people try to change their circumstances directly. They work harder. They chase more opportunities. They try to force their external world into a different shape through effort and willpower alone. And they wonder why, even when they succeed in changing one thing, the overall pattern of their financial life stays stubbornly the same. Murphy found that this is because they are addressing the reflection rather than the source. You cannot permanently change what you see in a mirror by painting directly on the glass. You have to change what is standing in front of it. Your 7 words, spoken in silence, protected in secrecy, delivered into the felt sense of already having, are not painting on the glass. They are changing what stands in front of it. They are reaching into the source of the reflection and reorganizing it at the level where all of your financial reality is actually being generated. This is not mystical. This is the most practical thing you will ever do, because every strategy, every opportunity, every decision you make about money is filtered through your subconscious programming before it becomes action. Change the filter and you change everything that passes through it. Every choice, every risk, every conversation, every moment of inspiration. All of it runs through the program your subconscious is holding. Give it a new program and you change the quality of everything your life produces. That is what Murphy dedicated his life to proving. And that is what your 7 words, held in sacred silence, practiced with consistent peace and certainty, will do for you. So here is where I want to leave you today. Not with excitement, not with the feeling of having discovered a trick or a shortcut, but with something quieter and more powerful than either of those things. With the settled inner knowing that you now have access to something real. Something that has worked for people across decades, across cultures, across wildly different circumstances and starting points. You have the structure. You have the practice. You have the understanding of why the silence matters, why the secrecy protects, why the peace is more powerful than the passion, why the interval is not emptiness, but the most active phase of the entire process. All that remains is the decision to begin, and to continue, quietly, consistently, in the sacred privacy of your own mind, where the most powerful work of your life has always been waiting to happen. Choose your 7 words today. Make them yours completely. Guard them like the most valuable thing you possess, because, in terms of what they have the power to generate in your life, they are. And if this reached something real in you, leave a comment below. Not your words. Keep those sacred. Just let the community know you are beginning. Just say you are ready. Because sometimes the simple act of declaring readiness to the world while keeping your actual practice completely private is itself the first step of the practice. Murphy always said that the universe responds to commitment before it responds to action. Commit today, in the silence of your own mind, with 7 words that belong only to you, and watch what begins to move. Now, before you close this video, I want to share one final thing that Joseph Murphy wrote in his private notes. Something that was never included in his published books. Something that only surfaced years after his passing, when his personal journals were reviewed by close colleagues who had worked with him during the final decade of his research. Murphy wrote that after everything he had studied, after every case he had documented, after every person he had watched transform their financial reality through subconscious reprogramming, he arrived at a conclusion that surprised even him. He wrote that the 7 words were never really about money. Let that sit for a moment. He said that money was simply the most visible and measurable way that people could track the transformation happening inside them. It was the scoreboard that made the invisible visible, the evidence that the inner world had genuinely changed. But the actual transformation, the one that the 7 words were producing, was something far deeper than a changed bank balance. It was a changed identity. Murphy believed that every human being carries inside them what he called a foundational self-concept, a deeply held, largely unconscious answer to the question of who they fundamentally are and what they fundamentally deserve. And he found that this foundational self-concept was the single most powerful force in any person's life. More powerful than their education, more powerful than their circumstances, more powerful than their intelligence, their connections, their opportunities, or their effort. Because your foundational self-concept doesn't just influence your decisions. It filters your entire perception of reality. It determines which opportunities you can even see, which risks feel possible, which versions of yourself you can genuinely imagine inhabiting, which futures feel real to you, and which ones feel like fantasies that belong to other kinds of people. Most people have a foundational self-concept that was written for them before they were old enough to question it. Written by the circumstances of their childhood, by the words of people around them, by the accumulated experience of what they were told they were and what they were shown they could expect. And that foundational self-concept has been quietly running their life ever since, so embedded that they experience it not as a belief they hold but as the truth of who they are. What Murphy discovered, and what moved him so deeply that he spent the final years of his life trying to communicate it in every way he could find, was that the foundational self-concept can be rewritten, that it is not fixed, that it is not permanent, that it is not who you actually are, but simply a program that has been running in the place where your true self was always meant to operate. And the 7 words, spoken in the silence and privacy of your own mind, with the emotional charge of already having, repeated with the peaceful certainty of someone who knows rather than hopes, those 7 words are not just a financial technique. They are a daily act of identity reclamation. They are you reaching into the deepest layer of your own programming and writing a new answer to the most fundamental question your subconscious is always asking. Who are you? Every time you speak your 7 words with genuine conviction, you are answering that question differently than you were programmed to answer it. You are saying quietly and privately and powerfully that you are someone for whom abundance flows naturally. Someone for whom everything needed arrives easily. Someone who is a natural destination for wealth and opportunity and goodness in all its forms. And your subconscious, which is always working to confirm and reinforce whoever it believes you to be, begins building a life that matches that answer instead of the old one. Murphy wrote something in those private journals that I want to read to you carefully because I think it is the most important thing he ever put into words. He wrote that the tragedy of most human lives is not that people want too much. It is that somewhere deep inside, in a place they rarely visit and almost never examine, they have accepted that they are the kind of person for whom wanting too much is all they get to do. The wanting without the having, the dreaming without the arriving, and they have lived inside that acceptance for so long that it no longer feels like an acceptance. It feels like a fact. He said that the purpose of the 7 words was never to attract money from outside. It was to dissolve the acceptance from inside, to reach into that quiet, dark, rarely visited place where the story of who you are was written without your consent and replace it word by word with a story that is finally true. Finally true, not optimistic, not hopeful, not aspirational, true, because Murphy believed, with a conviction that deepened rather than wavered over 40 years of research, that abundance is the natural state of the human being. That scarcity is the program. That limitation is the layer that was added. That underneath every story of lack and struggle and never quite enough is a self that was always whole, always worthy, always the natural destination of everything it needed. The 7 words don't create that self. They uncover it. And this is why the secrecy is sacred, because what you are uncovering is not a technique. It is not a strategy. It is not a hack or a shortcut or a trick of the mind. It is the truest thing about you. And the truest things about us are always the ones we hold most privately. The ones that exist beneath performance and presentation and what we show the world. The ones that live in the silence where nobody else's voice can reach. Your 7 words live there, in that silence, in that sacred private space that belongs only to you and whatever force you believe moves through this universe. Murphy spent his entire life trying to give people access to that space, not through complex rituals or difficult practices or years of study. Through 7 words, through 30 seconds of genuine privacy, through the willingness to feel, even briefly, what it is like to already be the person you are becoming. That is the whole practice. That is the complete teaching. Everything else, every book, every lecture, every documented case and explained mechanism, was simply Murphy trying to help people trust something simple enough to actually do. So I am going to ask you to do something right now before this video ends, not after. Right now, while something in you is still open and listening and willing to believe that things can be different than they have been. Close your eyes for just a moment. Take one slow breath and ask yourself honestly what 7 words would feel completely true to you if you genuinely believed that abundance was your natural state. Not your hoped-for state, not your working toward state, your natural state. The way breathing is your natural state. The way your heart beating is your natural state. What 7 words capture the truth for you in your own voice, in your own inner language, in a way that when you say them silently to yourself, they feel not like a wish, but like a remembering. Find those words. They are already somewhere inside you. Murphy believed they always are. That the right words for each person are not invented but recognized. That when you find them you will know, because something in you will relax rather than strain, will settle rather than reach, will feel like coming home rather than setting out. Find those words. Write them somewhere only you will ever look. Memorize them until they are as natural as your own name, and then use them every day. In the moments of privacy that Murphy identified as the open windows of your subconscious mind, before financial decisions, before important conversations, before any action that matters to the life you are building. Use them in peace rather than desperation, in certainty rather than hope, in the quiet inner posture of someone who knows that what belongs to them is already in motion toward them, already finding its way, already certain to arrive and protect them with the same ferocity and tenderness that you would protect the most precious thing you have ever been given. Because in terms of what they can generate in your life, in terms of the identity they are quietly rebuilding every time you speak them, in terms of the future they are constructing in the invisible architecture of your subconscious mind, they are the most precious thing you have ever been given. Murphy always ended his lectures with the same words. Not because he was being dramatic, but because after 40 years of watching people transform their lives through the power of their own subconscious mind, he believed it was simply the most accurate thing he could say. He would look out at the room quietly, and he would say, "The power is within you." Not some of it, not a limited version of it, not a version that works for other people but might not work for you. All of it. The full creative power of a subconscious mind that has never once in your entire life stopped working to build the reality it was programmed to build. Give it a new program. Speak it in silence. Guard it in secrecy. Live it in peace, and watch the life that was always supposed to be yours begin, finally and completely and without apology, to arrive. If this video gave you something real today, something that landed deeper than motivation or inspiration, something that felt like a genuine shift in how you understand your own mind and your own potential, please subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me you have found your 7 words, not the words themselves, never those, but simply that you have found them, that you are beginning, that you are ready, because this community is built on one shared understanding, that the life we are capable of living is not determined by our past, not by our circumstances, not by what we have been told we are or what we have come to believe about ourselves through years of programming that was never truly ours to begin with. It is determined by what we are willing to speak into the deepest, most powerful, most creative part of ourselves, in silence, in secrecy, in the sacred privacy of 7 words that belong to nobody else in the world but you. Murphy gave us the key. The door has always been inside you. Open it.